that parents give to their children. Sometimes that blessing, that bracha, is given one time a year, right before the start of Yom Kippur. Some families have the custom that every Friday, on Shabbat, at night, Friday night, they do this special blessing called Birchat Habanim. They give separate blessings for their sons and for their daughters. A beautiful bracha for the daughters. They say, Simeich Elokim, may my daughter be just as great as Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. With a raised hand, can anyone here tell me one thing about either Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, or Leah? Anything that you remember about how great either Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, or Leah were? Yes?
Sarah was Abraham's wife.
And so Sarah was, was married to Abraham. That's absolutely correct. Yes?
Yaakov wanted to marry Rivka.
So Yaakov, he ended up marrying Rachel because he wanted to marry Rachel, right? Very good. Yes? It's hard because there's so many things maybe to choose from. We'll get back to you. Yes? They were generous, kind, hospitable, beautiful. We're going to get back to that. Yes, one more. Yes, Amy? Hold that thought. I'm going to ask you, do you remember now? What? That's the greatest. That's the most important thing in the world. Rivka is her Hebrew name. Of course. Beautiful. So, yes, one more in the back. Sarah had a baby at a very old age. That's correct. Go ahead. They are important. Yes. The matriarchs of Judaism. Very good. I know a lot of you have everyone has their hands raised because there's so many possible answers. And it makes a lot of sense. We studied so much about Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, and we remember their kindness, their generosity, how thoughtful they were. They're always thinking of other people. It makes a lot of sense that I want to be able to give that bracha to my daughter, and I want them to be as nice, as kind, as thoughtful as those matriarchs. Now, there's also another bracha, a different one, that's given to boys. Yisimcha Elohim Efraim Menashe. May my sons be as great as Efraim and Menashe. The problem is, who's Efraim and Menashe? We may know how they're related to Yosef, their kids, but we don't really know much about them. It's kind of hard to understand why do we give a bracha of Efraim and Menashe. But the truth is that's in this week's Parshat. That Yaakov gave this bracha to his grandkids, and therefore we also do the same thing, and we say the same words. Maybe we would think a better bracha, just like to the daughters, we should say, may my children be like Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. But we don't do that. Instead we say Efraim and Menashe. So I'd like to share with you one possible answer. I know you guys have your hands raised, and I appreciate it. I want to be able to just quickly move on, but I'm happy to hear it afterwards, your thoughts. If we look all the way to the beginning of Sefer Bereshit, we're finishing Sefer Bereshit today, tomorrow, and if we look at the beginning, we find something interesting when it comes to brothers, to siblings. Starting off with the first set of brothers, Cain and Hevel. Cain was the older one. Hevel was the youngest. Hashem favored, for whatever reason, you have to study the Parshat, favored the korbanot, the sacrifice of Hevel, and Cain got all upset. Were Cain and Hevel, with a raised hand, were they friendly with one another? Was Cain happy about that whole thing? Yes? No, they did not like each other. That's a very unfortunate reality, but that's what happened. And we fast forward to Abraham. He had 2 kids, Yitzchak and Yishmael. Interestingly enough, once again, Yishmael is the older one. Yitzchak ends up being the more famous son. And once again, with a raised hand, did Yishmael get along very well with his brother Yitzchak?
No.
Not at all, right? Let's go to the next generation. Yaakov. Yaakov had a brother. His name was Esau. That's his brother. Twin. Did Yaakov and Esau get along very well? Okay. No. I think we see where this pattern is leading. Let's go one more generation. Let's look at Yaakov's kids. He had a lot of boys, and one of them was Yosef. Did all the other brothers, shout it out, did the other brothers like Yosef? Now it's interesting, as I said, in all of those cases, the younger son ended up being the more powerful child, the one that was recognized to be the greater of the two, every single time, as we saw, by Hevel, by Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Yosef. He was not the oldest, he was one of the youngest. And now in this week's Parshat, we have 2 kids, Efraim and Menashe. And Yosef situated them right in front of his father, so that he would put his stronger hand on the head, which is how they sometimes would give brachot, on the head of the older child, and the left hand on the head of the younger one. Because the right hand is stronger, it means that I'm giving a stronger, bigger bracha to this older child. But something interesting happened with his hands. What happened with Yaakov's hands? He raised his hands? No? Yes? He was doing some dancing, right? Yeah, he switched his hands like this. He gave very good. Go ahead.
He didn't know because he was blind.
So we'll get back to that with Yitzchak. You're right also. But when he crossed his hands, right, he ended up putting a stronger hand on the younger boy's head. And that younger boy's name was Efraim, and the older boy's name was Menashe. I want to tell you something unbelievable. Efraim and Menashe, even though the younger one got the better bracha, was Menashe upset about it? He wasn't upset. He accepted it. He was happy, which is a very important lesson that we want to give to you and all of our children. Unlike all the other people, they didn't like the fact that I got more or I got less. But when it came to Efraim and Menashe, they were happy with what they had. In Hebrew, it's called being sameach b'chelko. If you think about it, in our homes, maybe dinner tonight, there may be a big cake, and your parents may cut it up, and you can look at it and say, hey, how come my brother got a bigger piece than me? That's one way of looking at it. The other thing you can say is, you know what? I'm happy that I also have something. I can still say Todah, thank you. And I don't have to look so much about what someone else has. I can be happy with what I have. So this is the bracha that I give to you and all parents. That when they bless you, they want you to be like Efraim and Menashe. That you are happy with who you are. You have love and peace between your brothers and your sisters. May that, in fact, be the bracha that I give to you today. Simcha Elokim, Efraim, Menashe. Shabbat Shalom.